What the young girl had to sacrifice to survive when the city was occupied is something you can't even imagine. Warsaw Uprising 1944. Bandages in a burning city follows a young Polish woman who becomes a civilian medical helper during one of the most desperate urban battles of World War I. She is not a soldier in the traditional sense. She does not carry a rifle, lead an attack, or command a unit. Her weapon is a roll of bandage, a small medical satchel, and the courage to move through a city that is collapsing street by street. As the Warsaw Uprising begins, ordinary civilian life is rapidly transformed into a network of barricades, aid stations, courtyards, basements, and hidden passageways. The city is no longer a place of homes and familiar streets. It becomes a battlefield made of smoke, rubble, fire, and impossible choices. At the center of the story is her duty, carrying scarce medical supplies to wounded resistance fighters and civilians. Bandages are limited. Medicine is nearly gone. Every piece of cloth must be used carefully. A single mistake in route, timing, or delivery can mean that someone bleeds for too long,
Thank God. Get it to him.
waits in pain, or never reaches help. The young woman moves through ruined stairwells, narrow alleys, broken courtyards, and underground aid stations while German shelling and air attacks grind the city down around her. Each trip becomes more dangerous than the last, because the routes she used yesterday may be blocked today by rubble, fire, or enemy fire. The film presents Warsaw as a living system under pressure. Barricades appear at intersections. Courtyards become temporary triage points. Basements become shelters. Churches, apartments, shops, and school buildings are turned into improvised medical posts. Civilians carry water, move stretchers, tear cloth into bandages, and guide the wounded through damaged buildings. Resistance fighters defend streets that are already half destroyed. Messengers run between positions with information that may already be outdated by the time they arrive. The city changes constantly, forcing everyone inside it to adapt or perish. The young woman's journey is not built around glory. It is built around movement, labor, and endurance. She crosses from one resistance-held zone to another, always watching the ground. The walls, the smoke, and the sky. She learns which courtyards are still passable, which stairways might collapse, and which streets are too exposed. She follows hand signals, whispered directions, chalk marks, and improvised route systems. Sometimes she arrives just in time with bandages. Sometimes she arrives too late. Sometimes she must turn back because the way ahead has disappeared beneath debris. The film's tension comes from these small practical struggles. A missing roll of cloth, a blocked passage, a wounded man who cannot be moved, a courtyard suddenly hit by shell fire.
Let's go.
A doorway that no longer opens. As the uprising continues, Warsaw becomes increasingly unrecognizable. Fires spread from building to building. Smoke settles into the streets until daylight feels dim and dirty. Rubble piles rise where homes once stood. Barricades that once symbolized defiance become traps when the shelling intensifies. The young medical helper sees the city resistance and suffering at close range. She treats wounded adults on floors, stair landings, cellar benches, and makeshift tables. She helps hold pressure on wounds, passes water to the injured, and hands supplies to exhausted medics. Around her, adults work with grim focus because there is no time for long speeches or dramatic gestures. Survival is practical, repetitive, and immediate. The emotional power of the story comes from the contrast between her small task and the vast destruction surrounding it. A bandage is simple, a street crossing is short, a courtyard seems ordinary. Yet in Warsaw in 1944, these small things become matters of life and death. The film shows how war turns civilian spaces into systems of resistance. A kitchen becomes a treatment room. A basement becomes a hospital. A wall becomes protection. A doorway becomes a checkpoint between life and danger. The young woman becomes part of this system, not as a heroic icon, but as one of many ordinary people keeping others alive while the city burns. As the German assault grows heavier, the routes between aid stations become harder to maintain. Shelling cuts off streets. Fires force detours. Wounded adults must be moved through cellars and underground passages. The young woman carries bandages through these shifting paths, often guided by people who know only part of the route. Every movement depends on trust and timing. She must decide when to wait, when to run, when to crawl, and when to abandon one path for another. Her courage is not loud. It is the quiet decision to keep going after seeing what the city is becoming. The uprising is shown not as a single battle, but as a slow tightening of pressure. At first, there is urgency and hope. Resistance routes are active, people move with purpose. And the city still feels alive despite the danger. But as days pass, destruction spreads, supplies shrink, aid stations become overcrowded, the wounded arrive faster than they can be treated. The young woman begins to understand that Warsaw is fighting not only against soldiers and weapons, but against exhaustion, hunger, fire, fear, and time itself. By the end, the city around her has been transformed into a landscape of smoke and ruins. Yet the story does not end in empty spectacle. It remains focused on human endurance. The young woman still carries what little she can. She still moves toward those who need help. She still follows the fragile routes between broken buildings. Her work becomes a symbol of the uprising's deepest truth. Resistance is not only found in weapons, but also in the hands that bandage wounds, the feet that cross burning streets, and the people who refuse to abandon one another. Warsaw Uprising 1944. Bandages in a Burning City is a story about a young Polish woman who witnesses her city collapse while trying to preserve life inside it. Through fire, smoke, rubble, and relentless shelling, she becomes part of Warsaw's hidden network of care. Her journey shows the human cost of urban resistance and the quiet bravery of civilians who kept moving through a dying city because someone, somewhere was still waiting for help.
The street is collapsing. We need to move them further back. Hurry, deeper into the cellar. Keep your heads down.
Oh God, not again!